1 hour of general debate on the plan to cut $40 billion in spending over the next 6 months. Now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, Reverend Arthur Cabot, St. Charles Lwanga Center, St. Louis, Missouri. Reverend Cabot.
In times like these, we need the Almighty Good Shepherd to be with us. Lead us, Lord, through valleys and shadows onward to straight paths. In times like these, we need the God of the breakthrough to give us the ability to see transforming possibilities. Guide us, Lord, through the challenges of our modern lives, where sometimes hope is juxtaposed with despair. Grant that this august body will continue to move towards the common good, mindful of the inherent dignity that you, God, have placed within us. Grant that our hearts will resound, "Blessed are we among nations. Blessed are we who dwell in this place and claim the potential for more love, peace, and inclusion for all people to partake of the fruits of this magnificent land." Shepherd us, Lord. The promise of your goodness and compassion sustains our work and sustains our offering of thanksgiving this hour and evermore. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of last day's proceeding and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose the gentleman from Texas rise?
Pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, I demand a vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal.
The question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, as many as in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the Chair, the journal stands approved.
Mr. Speaker.
What purpose the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present and make a point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 80 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Clay, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor our guest chaplain, one of my outstanding constituents, Father Arthur Cabot. Father Art, as he is known in St. Louis, is a leader in religious outreach and educational development efforts within the African American Catholic community. His St. Charles Lwanga Center, located in North St. Louis City, offers Bible study, pastoral care, and conducts an outstanding youth ministry. Father Art's spiritual leadership through his center and as an educator at Cardinal Ritter College Preparatory is reaching thousands of young people, changing lives, and helping to reclaim neighborhoods that have seen far too much violence, intolerance, and pain. Father Art is bringing the church's message of love, truth, tolerance, and mutual understanding to those in our community who need it most. I am very honored to salute him today as our special guest. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, the Victims of Crime Act, or VOCA as it's called, is a wonderful idea that requires convicted criminals to pay into a fund that is used by crime victims. It is the idea that criminals pay for the system they have created. They pay rent on the courthouse, so to speak, by giving money in a fund that goes to these victims. This VOCA fund is about $6 billion. This is not taxpayer money. It's money that belongs to victims. But federal bureaucrats seem to want to rob this fund and pay for other federal programs. We cannot allow this money to be taken from victims of violent crime. This money should be placed in the lockbox so that it is only used by crime victims and victim services. During this National Crime Victims Week, our nation must constantly be sensitive to the needs of people that have been robbed, assaulted, and harmed by criminals. We as a nation are judged not by the way we treat the rich, the powerful, and the famous, but by the way we treat the innocent, the children, the elderly, and victims of crime. And that's just the way it is.
What purpose, the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman has expired. For what purpose, the gentlelady from Kansas rise? Without objection, so ordered.
I have the honor and privilege of representing Fort Riley, home of the Big Red One, Fort Leavenworth, host to the Army Command and General Staff College, the 190th Coyotes out of Forbes Field, and nearly 12,000 National Guard and Reserve members. With this strong military presence comes a large number of military families and children. I rise today in recognition of April as the month of the military child. This is a time for all my colleagues to applaud the strength, sacrifice, heroism, and continued resilience shown by the children of our servicemen and women. Kansas is proud to have more than 33,000 children with at least one parent serving in the military. And this month we recognize that when parents serve in the military, their children also serve. I will continue to do everything I can to support not only our men and women in uniform, but their children who sacrifice equally for our country. I yield back.
Expired. What purpose, the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 1965, when Medicare was passed, only 50% of America's seniors could afford or buy health insurance. That was not an accident. It was because the high risk of people over age 65 made that market basically uninsurable. I'm from Connecticut. We know a little bit about insurance in the state of Connecticut, and looking at the Ryan Republican Medicare plan, which would give seniors vouchers to go out and buy insurance, all we're asking for is to repeat history, which is where this country was in 1965. We must protect a guaranteed benefit for seniors. We learned that lesson throughout the early 1900s through 1965. The Ryan plan takes us back to a time when seniors will be paying massive out-of-pocket costs. CBO estimates it will triple out-of-pocket costs for seniors. It is the wrong way to go. President Obama's plan that he laid out yesterday, which is a thoughtful, intelligent approach to lower health care costs, but protects a guaranteed benefit for seniors, is what this country needs and what our senior citizens need. I yield back the balance of my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow's tax day. I'm sure there's some folks out there who haven't quite filled out all their forms yet, haven't quite finished up all of that paperwork yet, but it doesn't have to be that way. There are alternatives to change the tax code in this country, and one of those alternatives is the fair tax. H.R. 25 is introduced in this House. The fair tax, H.R. 25, is the only bill in Congress to eliminate the incentive that American companies have to move American jobs overseas. The fair tax is the only bill in Congress to change the tax code so that those jobs that have moved overseas, those dollars that have gone overseas, have an incentive to return. The fair tax is the only tax bill in Congress that abolishes the payroll tax, that 15.3% FICA tax that is the highest tax that 80% of working American families pay. The fair tax, H.R. 25, is a different way and a better way, and we can make April 15th just another spring day. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, we have an obligation to our generations who built America. That's why we will not allow the Republicans to terminate Medicare with extreme prejudice. We will not allow them to turn a guarantee for seniors into a voucher program for the insurance industry. We will not allow them to turn Medicare into Medi-Gone. We will not allow them to give us 6,000 reasons to vote against their harebrained scheme because they want to put $6,000 more costs on our senior citizens. This is a noble obligation. It should not be shredded. We should reduce medical inflation, not put this burden on senior citizens, preserve Medicare, and reject the Republican scheme.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The White House has presented its sequel budget plan for America. But this sequel looks strangely like the prequel, filled with rhetoric, flat on vision for economic growth, and heavy on new taxes for America's small business owners and job creators. As a CPA who operated my own practice, I have filed thousands of tax returns for individuals and small businesses. I have not only met payroll myself, but I have examined the bottom line of businesses who are trying to keep their doors open. The sequel plan offered by the White House will tax those who are trying to expand and invest. It will ultimately cripple job growth and recovery in America. Chairman Paul Ryan has presented a plan with a vision for job growth. It supports many of the concepts that, as a CPA, I have long advocated for, such as simplifying the tax code and reducing tax levels for small businesses and families. As a CPA, I know the Ryan plan presents a path to prosperity for America, and I will support it tomorrow. I yield back the balance of my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize National Autism Awareness Month and to express my support for ongoing efforts across the nation that are devoted to improving the treatment of those individuals with autism and their families. Today, 1 in 110 children are affected by autism. My home state of New Jersey has the highest rate of autism in the country. With the help of treatment and support centers, the lives of individuals and families affected by autism are improved every day. I am proud that such a facility exists in my district. The Center for Autism at the North Ward Center provides the highest quality of care to individuals and families in the greater Newark area. Under one roof, the center offers seamless and comprehensive range of services for the lifespan of individuals with autism, treating the whole person and the whole family, focusing on strength-based intervention. The center represents a one-stop approach to relieve the burden on already stressed families dealing with autism. The Center for Autism at the North Ward Center in Newark is only one example of how concentrated care can greatly better the lives of individuals and families affected by autism. And I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, this day marks a historic moment in our country. The rise in federal spending that has defined the last 3 years has ended. The bill that we will pass today in the House contains the largest cuts in our budget since the end of World War II. This bill is by no means perfect, and I, like many Americans, want more cuts. And I believe we will get them. These cuts are just the start. The words of Winston Churchill, spoken during a different battle, echo true today. He stated, "This is not the end. This is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning." Mr. Speaker, it is time to move beyond last year's business and start doing the work the American people sent us here to do. Tomorrow, we will take up legislation that will save us not billions, but trillions. And as this House considers addressing the debt ceiling, the Senate and the President need to know these cuts do not represent the end. They represent a resolve to continue the fight. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today in strong opposition to the Republican plan to gut Medicaid. This plan isn't about finding cost-effective ways to improve Medicaid. It's about limiting health care for some of the most vulnerable members of our society. It's telling seniors they no longer qualify for their nursing home care. It's taking away access to well-child visits. The Medicaid program isn't just numbers on a balance sheet. It's the only access to care for millions of low-income seniors, poor children, people with disabilities. And under the Republican proposal, there'll be less access and less care, especially in times of economic stress, like what we are going through today. Medicaid rolls swell as people lose jobs and families lose income. Under the Republican block grant scheme, tough times will mean even tougher times for the newly unemployed, the frail, the young. As a nurse, I believe a key moral measure of our society is how we treat the least among us. This irresponsible Republican proposal just doesn't measure up. I yield back the balance.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend our President for taking a mature and comprehensive approach to the problems we face. When a person has a need to lose weight, they both reduce their caloric content and they increase their exercise. And it's the same thing with the deficit we have. You have to have cuts or reforms, but you also have to have more revenue. And the President's proposal yesterday about finally getting around to taxing the millionaires and the billionaires and having them contribute to the needs to reduce our deficit are so important, while at the same time reforming Medicare, not eliminating Medicare. That's what's scary. Eliminating Medicare for seniors, threatening Social Security, and not providing an innovation program to create jobs. Jobs is the issue, and we need to create jobs in this country, and we haven't seen it coming forth. I praise the President for his mature approach to the situation and encourage others to fall in line. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Congresswoman Corrine Brown, and I'm from the great state of Florida, the home of Claude Pepper. And you know, he was the champion for senior citizens and the elderly. And he would be so appalled by the bill that the Republicans are bringing to the House floor tomorrow, gutting and privatizing Medicaid and Medicare in order to pay or give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. That's shocking. That's shocking to me. But Republicans are doing it after one hearing, which is unacceptable. You talk about open government. Why is it that we have not had hearings where we bring in our stakeholders and talk about how this would affect senior citizens? How can you dare to propose that people who may not even make $6,000 a year have to pay additional $6,000 a year for health care insurance? You know, it's so sad that in the People House, only the big dogs eat.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's sort of ironic that today we're going to bring up a budget, a Republican budget, that would end Medicare as we know it, but at the same time seek to repeal the health care reform legislation, or at least defund it. I don't understand how my Republican colleagues keep talking about repealing or defunding health care reform, but yet either have nothing to replace it with, or in this case are trying to gut or eliminate or end as we know it the existing health care programs that we have for senior citizens and the disabled in the case of Medicare and in the case of Medicaid for low-income people. They would tell seniors in their budget that they're supposed to go out and buy their own health insurance, and somehow they're going to give them some help. They call it premium support from the federal government. But they're now going to have to pay out of pocket to just buy their insurance, more and more. So they have to pay out of pocket for the premium, they have to pay out of pocket for a deductible, they have to pay out of pocket for the copay. Where does it end?
Time of the gentleman has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here to talk about the American dream, the American dream. That's what motivated the Asian American hotel owners to come to this country. Many of these hotel owners came here under circumstances similar to that of my dad. They came here to live the American dream, but not just for us, but by providing over 500,000 jobs to Americans throughout this great country. The Asian American Hotel Owners Association helped to provide the American dream to all of us. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 223 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 31, House Resolution 223, resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved and to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the concurrent resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 34, establishing the budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2012 and setting forth appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2013 through 2021. The first reading of the concurrent resolution shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the concurrent resolution are waived. General debate shall not exceed 4 hours, with 3 hours confined to the congressional budget equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Budget, and 1 hour on the subject of economic goals and policies equally divided and controlled by Representative Brady of Texas and Representative Hinchy of New York, or their respective designees. After general debate, the concurrent resolution shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. It shall be in order to consider as an original concurrent resolution for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule the amendment in the nature of a substitute printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. That amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. All points of order against that amendment in the nature of a substitute are waived. No amendment to that amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order, except those printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules. Each amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, and shall not be subject to amendment. All points of order against the amendments printed in Part B of the report are waived, except that the adoption of an amendment in the nature of a substitute shall constitute the conclusion of consideration of amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute made in order as original text. After the conclusion of consideration of the concurrent resolution for amendment and a final period of general debate, which shall not exceed 20 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Budget, the committee shall rise and report the concurrent resolution to the House with such amendment as may have been adopted. Any member may demand a separate vote in the House or any amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole to the concurrent resolution or to the amendment in the nature of a substitute made in order as original text. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the concurrent resolution and amendments thereto to final adoption without intervening motion, except amendments offered by the chairman of the Committee on the Budget pursuant to Section 305A5 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974 to achieve mathematical consistency. The concurrent resolution shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question of its adoption.
The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Scott, is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentlewoman from New York, Mrs. Slaughter, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you, sir. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir. House Resolution 223 provides for a structured rule for consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 34. This rule makes an order every complete substitute submitted to the Rules Committee. Continuing a bipartisan tradition, we are making an order 4 Democratic substitutes and 1 Republican substitute, providing 4 hours of general debate with ample debate on each substitute. This will allow the House to work its will and adopt a blueprint for the budget for fiscal year 2012. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule and the underlying bill. The underlying legislation is our budget 2012. Our 2012 budget is a blueprint for a strong and secure future for the next generation. Each of us is here today. Each of us is here today because of those who came before us making amazing sacrifices for the next generation, us, keeping alive the American dream. In the last century alone, our parents and grandparents have won 2 world wars, overcome the Great Depression, defeated communism, created the most prosperous and vibrant society in the history of mankind. Today, it is our turn. It is our turn to take a bold and necessary step to ensure that we pass on to our children this great blessing called America, and even a stronger America than the one we received from our parents. Paul Ryan calls this plan the path to prosperity. I call it leadership. It's what our country has been thirsting for. It confronts our problems head-on, and it proposes reasonable and responsible solutions to get us back on track. Our plan creates jobs, real jobs. 1 million new jobs in America in the first year alone. It stimulates our economy, increasing our GDP by $1.5 trillion in the next 10 years. And it protects and strengthens Social Security and Medicare. Let me say that one more time because so many people are trying to demagogue the issue. Our plan strengthens and protects Social Security and Medicare for the next generation of Americans. And it also reduces job-killing government spending by $6.2 trillion in the next 10 years. Yesterday, our president, he got on board. 2 months ago, he gave us his 2012 budget. And now we have 2012 2.0, the second time around. But the plan hasn't changed much, sir. The plan is basically the same. So let's compare our plan in the next 10 years to President Obama's plan over the next 12 years. President Obama would add $4 trillion to our debt, leaving us at the end of the next decade with $26 trillion of debt, according to the CBO. Even our Democratic colleagues in the House agree. They have presented a plan that breaks from their own president, cutting an additional $1.2 trillion off the deficit. The Republican budget cuts $6.2 trillion, bringing spending to under 20% of our economy. The Republican plan proposes specific and responsible solutions to strengthen Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. The President talks very vaguely about a plan to cut waste and streamline Medicare and Medicaid, proposing to create yet another unelected commission to solve all of our problems. We don't need more unelected bureaucrats in Washington, sir. Enlarging the scope of government, that's not real leadership. The President tries to tax our way out of debt, placing the burden on those earning more than $100,000. But the problem, sir, is a simple one. That if we were to tax these individuals 100% of their income, we still could not cover our deficit this year alone. As a matter of fact, to tax our way out of debt, we would need to increase taxes across the board on every man, on every woman, and every business by 60%. You simply cannot tax your way out of this debt. Imagine the effects that this would have on our economy. The President's budget cuts $400 billion out of our military. In the time that he's led us into Libya, in the times that we have two conflicts going on, it cuts $400 billion away from the men and women who are fighting for freedom, dying for liberty. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague, Mr. Scott, for yielding me the 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized for as much time as she may consume.
Mr. Speaker, we all recognize an urgent need to cut the nation's deficit. We need to have serious discussions and make tough discussions about how we prevent a fiscal crisis in our country, and certainly we are beginning those discussions. But sadly today, and I must emphasize this, sadly today this bill will end Medicare and cost shift to seniors $6,000 more a year. And why are they doing that? Well, they get to pay for more tax breaks for big oil and millionaires who are untouched in this country. That really is strange deficit reduction to me. I would think, frankly, if I had my druthers, I would start by ending the war in Afghanistan. That war is costing us $8 billion a month, and we're paying to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan while our own infrastructure crumbles and while we feel we cannot afford to spend any of our money on those of us who live here and pay the cost. Just yesterday, the President presented another way to solve our fiscal crisis as he laid out a budget that will responsibly reduce the spending and simplifies the tax code, which is so important, so that, as the President said, and this is critical to understand, the President said the taxes you pay are not going to be determined by the accountant you can afford. This is good news for all Americans. The President's budget puts us on the right track to ending the deficit crisis while investing in the long-term success of our economy and our country. Unfortunately, the thought is far too prevalent in this House that we need not invest in ourselves. We can just shut down programs and that everybody will be happy and singing in the streets. Not likely. But despite the responsible vision the President presented yesterday, we stand here today debating a reckless Republican budget that will destroy programs like Medicare while extending the tax cuts to the corporations and America's rich. The budget starts with Medicare, eliminating a program that provides secure and affordable health care in old age, and it is eliminated. People who are on Medicare now will be grandfathered in. In the future, what they will get will be a voucher with a certain amount of federal money that goes with it. They are then required to go and do the best they can in the private market to meet their health care needs. As we watch the cost in the private market climb, we would have to ask ourselves, would this government help out as Medicare would by raising the money that the government puts in to replace it? No, it wouldn't. So under this plan, a senior in the year 2021, and I hope there are a lot of them in this House who follow me on this, will pay $6,000 more for the private insurance that they had than they would have under Medicare. Now, if your insurance costs more than that, you better find a way to pay your creditors because you're going to be on your own. Today's budget bill also threatens the future of Social Security. It includes a trigger mechanism that would allow Social Security cuts to be rushed through the Congress at a future date. This trigger is an abuse of the legislative process and puts Social Security on the chopping block for future cuts. Furthermore, in an act that defies all logic, this bill cripples the watchdogs that we created just last year to police the big banks who created the financial crisis. Why in the world would we want to do that? In addition to Medicare and Social Security, it cuts 70% of our investments in clean energy, cuts 25% of our education funding, cuts out 30% of our transportation funding, including significantly less money for high-speed rail network designed to free us from foreign oil. But by stopping investments in key competitive areas, our nation is abandoning jobs and future economic opportunities that come with that clean energy, with a new transportation network, and the invaluable work of educating our children. This is the burden 90% of Americans are asked to share. Meanwhile, the Republican budget would make permanent the Bush-era tax cuts that further cuts taxes for corporations and America's richest individuals, including the oil companies. Do they need a federal subsidy? I think not. Had the Bush tax cuts been allowed to expire in December, we would almost be able to cut our deficit in half within a few months from now. The Republican majority apparently believes that the ones who have the most should sacrifice the least. Some will claim tax cuts create jobs. We hear that a lot around here. But analysis by respected experts, such as Pulitzer Prize winner and former New York Times tax expert David K. Johnston, has shown that tax cuts do nothing to spur the economy and create jobs. They simply pad the wallets of the wealthiest among us in times of a national need. As we shape a budget for 2012, we must craft legislation that truly shares the entire nation's sacrifice, not a budget that ends Medicare while handing more tax giveaways to those who need it the least and in many cases are asking not to be given it. Accordingly, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule, the underlying resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves her time. The gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to address a few points that Congresswoman Slaughter brought up. I have scoured the budget looking for this notion of a voucher system for Medicare. I've scoured the budget and simply cannot find anything that is, in fact, a voucher system. I have seen things about a premium support. But let's just talk about Medicare for just a quick second. $800 billion the President has suggested must come out of Medicare in order to pay for national health care. So we are going to take benefits from our senior citizens in an attempt to provide health care benefits for 19 and 20-year-olds. In fact, that $800 billion is one way to actually increase the cost to every senior citizen in our country. Increasing taxes by $2 trillion in the next 12 months is a wonderful way to make our economy stumble, and that's what the President has suggested. And finally, you cannot increase taxes on the very job creators themselves and then ask them to continue to create jobs. Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Kingston.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, we are facing a crisis in the country today. Imagine back home in your family budget if for every dollar you spent, 40 cents was borrowed. Surely You would bring your entire family in on the kitchen table and say, okay, what can we cut out? We cannot continue to borrow 40 cents for every dollar we spend. You would make changes in your household budget. But for some reason, many in Washington, D.C. want to stick their head in the sand and say, no, we really don't have to do this. And yet, right now, the national debt is 90% of the GDP. We borrow billions of dollars a year from China, which is not exactly a great idea in terms of national security. I sit on the Defense Subcommittee of Appropriations. We watch China year in, year out, building up their army, and yet we go to them over and over again for more money. And yet, while we do that, those in Washington, D.C. don't want to do anything. We heard yesterday the President's Mulligan budget. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States is responsible to submit his budget to Congress each year, which the President did in February, totally ignoring his own deficit Commission's recommendations. The Simpson Bowl language was not in there. And yet, yesterday, the President decided, oh, well, I think I'm going to introduce, give me one more chance. I'm going to introduce another budget which has a lot of phony numbers in there and a lot of false promises and calls for more studies in commissions. And I asked my Democrat friends, is that budget going to be on the floor today? Are we going to be able to offer it? Let me yield to my friend from Maryland.
If the Speaker would allow, we are going to be offering a Democratic alternative today.
You
and
will be
have
offering the budget the President talked about yesterday. I know that I'm going to yield back to my friend from Maryland, but I want to say this. We are offering, unlike when you guys were in charge, we're offering the Democrats opportunities to offer budgets. We think it's very important because we want the best of your ideas, and we think the best of our ideas can be combined together for the best of America. But what I do
Would
not like...
Would the gentleman yield for 5 seconds?
I am going to yield to my friend.
Because you will have that opportunity to vote on a Democratic alternative.
I'm going to yield to my friend, but here's what I want to say. Is that we keep hearing over and over again in the last 24 hours about the President's wonderful Mulligan budget that he offered yesterday, but I don't believe it's going to be offered on the floor of the House. Now let me yield to my friend.
As I indicated, you will have a Democratic alternative budget that we're going to put forward, and it will present a very clear choice for the members. We'll present a budget that achieves steady, predictable deficit reduction. And again, we make different choices in how we do it, and that's the center of the debate. So everyone will have an opportunity to vote on an alternative budget.
But let me ask specifically, the Mulligan budget that the President offered yesterday, will it be on the floor of the House today?
Well, the President did not offer what we call a budget. He offered what was an outline, an approach that he wants people to look at on a bipartisan basis. That's what the President proposed yesterday.
Well, let me thank my friend from Maryland for answering this, because I do think it's important for the Democrats to be given an opportunity to offer an alternative budget, and I'm glad that you will be, and there will be 5 such budgets. And I'm hoping even if your budgets don't pass that we can still pick and choose some parts of those, and there will be some parts of our budget that you like and want to support as well. But I want to emphasize over and over again that the President, who yesterday tried to reclaim some territory because he did not take on the recommendations of his own Deficit Reduction Commission, he's not offering a budget yesterday. What he did was give a speech. Now, the President is kind of becoming the spectator-in-chief or the speaker-in-chief. He's the guy who offers a budget and then yesterday decides to give a speech. Well, the time has come and gone for speeches. What our budget does is takes on some serious changes in our spending habit. It does tackle the difficult choices that we have on Medicaid and Medicare. It does not create a voucher system. It's a supplemental system which will give seniors more choices, and it doesn't affect anybody 55 years or older, which is very important. But we will hear from the liberals in this community the cage rattling of senior citizens over and over again, and that's why we can't make progress in this town, because we always reduce policy to politics. The time to put policy first is now. We've got to tone down our rhetoric and say, you know what, here is a plan to save and protect and preserve Medicaid and Medicare, not for the next election, not for politicians, but for America's future seniors. The baby boomers who are under 55 years old will have a Medicare and Medicaid plan that they can count on, because it will be there. If we don't change, it will not be there for them. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Later in this debate, if we defeat the previous question, I'll offer an amendment to the rule to make in order Mr. Tonko's amendment to protect Medicare, TRICARE, and Veterans Health Care from privatization or arbitrary spending caps, and I am pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the ranking member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Van Hollen.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the ranking member, and I'm glad my colleague raised the issue of the bipartisan fiscal commission, because the fiscal commission took a look at the Republican budget plan and said it was not balanced and not comprehensive and not a way to achieve a deficit reduction in a responsible way. That was the verdict of the bipartisan commission. Why did they say it was unbalanced? Because the Republican budget provides big tax breaks for special interests. You don't get rid of the subsidies to the big oil companies. You want to give an additional tax breaks to the very wealthy, including millionaires. And what do? For the trade-off, you cut funding for education kids, and you do end the Medicare guarantee. And we're going to have time to talk about other parts of the bill later on, but I want to talk about that now because it's going to be the subject of the previous question. What this budget does is say to seniors, you no longer may stay in the Medicare program today. You have to go into the private insurance market. And the way it saves money is it says as those costs in the private insurance market continue to go up, you're not going to get premium support that will keep up with it. You're going to get something that's of relatively fixed value compared to the rapidly rising health care costs, which is why, as the President said yesterday, in the year 2022, seniors would pay more under the Republican budget plan by over $6,300 than they do under current Medicare. And that continues to rise and rise and rise. I want to put an end today to this other talking point we keep hearing, that somehow they're offering seniors what members of Congress have. It's not true. What members of Congress have is something called the Fair Share Formula under the Federal Employees Health Benefit Plan. So as premiums go up, the risk to members of Congress and other federal employees is fixed at a certain percentage. Not true under the Republican Medicare plan. The way it saves money in the out years is, in fact, to make sure that share between Medicare and the senior is not fixed, that the senior has to pick up more of the cost. That is a fact, and that is how they make money in the out years, by putting it on the backs of seniors, even while they say they're going to bring down the top tax rate by 30% for the wealthiest people in this country. That's the kind of choices we're facing here. Now, Mr. Tonko from New York had an amendment before the Rules Committee on exactly this issue of ending Medicare and the guarantee that it provides, and saying you got to go into the private system. If I could have an additional 30 seconds, please.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for additional 30 seconds.
And his amendment makes the point that if you think this is a good idea, if the Republicans think this is such a good idea, why don't you apply it to veterans? Why don't you apply it to active service personnel? If this is such a great thing, why don't you turn them into voucher, premium support, whatever you want, a kind of plan where they have to eat the costs, rising costs of health care. And so people are going to have an opportunity. If you vote no on the previous question, you'll be able to vote to say, let's not turn Medicare into a voucher premium support. Let's not end the guarantee. And let's not do that for our military personnel or our veterans either. Thank you very much.
Has expired. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's just clarify a simple point here. The only specific savings, the only specified savings in this budget are from raising taxes and cutting the military. Raising taxes and cutting the military. And if we really wanted to have an opportunity to make Medicare last longer, we could simply repeal Obamacare, repeal national health care, and put that $800 billion back in to Medicare.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
The the Democratic alternative says, yes, we should ask the highest income earners, the folks at the top 2%, to simply pay the same rate that they paid during the Clinton administration when the economy was roaring and we created 20 million jobs. That's what the choices are before us, and that's exactly the point you're making. You want to end the Medicare guarantee for seniors. At the same time, you want to give tax breaks to folks at the very top. That's your choice. You can make it, but we don't think that's the choice the American people want to make.
Congressman, the fact is simple. We could tax those over $100,000 a year 100%, and we still simply cannot close the deficit for this year. The fact of the matter is, if people talk about this government getting smaller, and the President's original budget spent $47 trillion in the next 10 years, an $8.7 trillion increase in spending. We're talking about a $2 trillion increase in spending in the next 12 months in taxes. We're not talking about reducing the size and scope of this government. We must get ourselves on a completely different trajectory. We must bend the trajectory back towards the American people, back towards the private sector, and eliminate the disincentive for growth in our economy called taxation. So to the extent that we can flatten the tax, spread the risk, we find ourselves in a more prosperous society with a stronger economy led by those folks in the private sector, entrepreneurs who have an opportunity to take those dollars, reinvest it in such a way and create more jobs. It is a simple formula.
If the gentleman...
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney.
The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for the opportunity to speak. Mr. Speaker, it's been roughly 100 days since I've been here. I'm one of the new folks in Congress. I began with my very first presentation several months ago congratulating my opponents across the aisle for saying all of the right things about where we're going to go this year, about how concerned they were about cutting spending, concerned they were about balancing the budget. And I was actually excited at that time to hear folks across the aisle using a lot of the same language that we were using. Apparently, by now, I guess I have to expose myself for being somewhat naive. Here we are again today hearing the exact same language, that the other side is deathly serious about cutting spending, the other side is deathly serious about balancing the budget. And I've come to realize, as I think most of America has, that the words simply don't match up to the language. I guess on a certain extent, I should be happy that we are here at least having this debate. We're here today discussing the 2012 budget for the first time. This would be the first time in 2 years that this debate has taken place on this floor, since there was no budget last year offered by my colleagues across the way. I can simply ask them, if you are indeed serious today about balancing the budget, serious today about getting spending under control, where have you been for the last 4 years? Where were you last year when this debate was not even allowed to take place on the floor of the House of Representatives? But let's put that behind us now. Let's move on to the 2012, because what are we seeing? We're seeing some wonderful language out of our colleagues on the other side. We saw the President in the State of the Union say a lot of the things that folks like me wanted to hear. And then we saw a budget that did absolutely nothing out of the White House. Nothing. A budget that was decried by the Washington Post as actually being void of ideas and failing to lead. So what did our side do? We led. And in our budget, we actually introduced specific proposals on how to solve the problem. Did you like them? No. Did I like all of them? No. Are we all going to like all of the proposals? No chance. But at least we offered ideas, specific ideas. Then yesterday we heard the President was going to do the same thing, that he was going to meet us, and that he wasn't going to attack us. He was actually going to put specific ideas on the table and invited my colleagues to sit in the front row while he called them un-American and again refused to give any specifics. Mr. Speaker, you will not see the President's budget offered today or tomorrow as an amendment. You will not see the budget that the President discussed yesterday offered as an amendment because it simply does not meet the specific requirements of being a budget amendment. It doesn't even come close. What the President talked about last night was more empty ideas and political rhetoric. The speech was introduced by his campaign manager, not by his Director of Office and Management and Budget, not by the Secretary of the Treasury. It was a political speech. I'm extraordinarily frustrated with that. I have an economics background. I'd love to sit and talk about the economic realities that face our nation. It is so difficult to do when the other side, led by the President, simply wants to engage in politics. Here again today, we've seen it. We said, well, you've seen talking points. somehow our proposal is going to raise or require seniors to pay $6,000 out of pocket. We've looked for the last 12 hours to try and find that, Mr. Speaker, and we can't find it. What we did find, however, is the CBO report that says that the payment under our proposed system for 65-year-olds in 2020, 10 years on, would be the exact same as it would be under Medicare, that the spending per capita on seniors under our proposal 10 years on would be the same as it is under the current law. I'm not sure where the $6,300 is coming from. My guess is it's coming from somebody's political office and not from some economic think tank. You heard my esteemed colleague, who I've enjoyed working with on the Budget Committee for Maryland, talk about the fiscal. Give me just a few minutes, Mr. Van Hollen. I will give you the opportunity to talk about. You mentioned the Fiscal Commission, and I think lost in a lot of the discussion yesterday about the President's speech was the comments that one of the co-chairs of that committee made as he walked out of the room after the President gave his speech, and they said, "Mr. Simpson, what do you think the course of action should be from here on out?" And his answer was pray. Pray. Is that what we've come to? Is that what we've come to as a nation, that the best chance we have to balance our budget is prayer? I'm a big believer in prayer, don't get me wrong, but we need to be met on the real issues. We cannot have the other side continuing to meet our specific proposals with rhetoric. To the extent that we will see specific proposals, I think we saw a brief introduction to it during the amendment process in the committee. Every single Democrat amendment, that's not fair, that's not fair. There were 3 or 4, including 1 or 2 that I think I voted for. We did have a couple of bipartisan amendments passed, but the large majority of the Democrat proposals to amendments to this budget during the budget process were fairly simply described as increased taxes and increased spending. It was a series of increased taxes and increased spending. My fear, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, is that's what we're going to see for the next few days, and it's a tremendous loss that here we are able to discuss the budget for the first time in 2 years, but the debate will be purely political.
Time, the gentleman has expired. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield a minute to the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen.
How much? 1 minute.
1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the ranking member. If my colleague would remember, one of the first amendments that was offered to say, let's be serious about the deficit, let's have shared sacrifice, let's ask those folks paying over $1 million to go back to the same tax rates that they were during the Clinton administration and put some of that money to deficit reduction. We offered other amendments by saying let's let the big oil companies do a little less with the taxpayer subsidies and focus that on higher priorities. The gentleman asked where the figure of a senior would have to pay more than $6,000 more in the year 2022 under the Republican proposal. That is from the CBO letter to the chairman of the Budget Committee, where they did their analysis of the long-term impact. So it was not a Republican outfit. It was not a Democratic outfit. In fact, the chairman of the committee has made it clear that he has used the CBO baseline for the purposes of his own budget. This is out of a CBO report, and I think we need to take it seriously because we can all have our own arguments and opinions, but there are certain facts that we can't run away from, and that's one of them.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, Chairman Dreyer.
Gentleman from California, the distinguished chairman of the Rules Committee, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Speaker, I ask consent to provide and extend
without objection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation not only to the gentleman from North Charleston for his superb management of this rule, but also to salute my friend from Lawrenceville, Georgia, Mr. Woodall, who serves from the Rules Committee to the Committee on the Budget. We actually have clearly changed the entire trajectory with the budget that we are going to consider with this rule. And I should say that as I listened to the exchange that took place between Messrs. Van Hollen and Kingston earlier, we've changed the debate. In the last session of Congress, Mr. Speaker, there was not a budget considered. We didn't go through this. And yet we are going to have every single substitute, from the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, Mr. Cooper, the Democratic substitute, all considered, and we're going to have a free-flowing debate today and tomorrow on that. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me just say that yesterday I stood here at 1:30 just as the President was getting ready to deliver his speech, and I indicated some real hope and optimism by virtue of the fact that early indications were that the President would be talking about the need for entitlement reform. And I have to say that I was more than disappointed in the fact that the speech was a little more political than I thought it could have been, and it was at best a very first step, but a little too modest for my taste. Mr. Speaker, it is essential that we work in a bipartisan way to take on the burden and the cost of Medicare especially and Social Security as well. Why? So that we can save, not abolish, Medicare and Social Security. The American people have been compelled throughout their entire lifetimes to pay the FICA tax. They, in fact, should have an opportunity to have what is much needed, health care and retirement benefits. And the course that we're on right now, Mr. Speaker, has created a scenario whereby they will be lost. That's why we're working to save it. It can only be done, I believe, Mr. Speaker, if we do it in a bipartisan way. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.